the kind of culture that we've, guys like me and you, I think, have been fighting back against for some years now, where the level of entitlement that some of these people have, like, there isn't a feeling of like the little bit of shame that we would just appreciate if someone's living on welfare, like just a little bit, understand that like other people are going to work and are paying for your food. You shouldn't feel great about that.
Fuming SNAP recipients threaten to loot if food stamps are cut November 1st. Stay the F out of my way. Here's a video that I showed in a previous segment, but we'll play again before we talk with Dave.
If I came in your house with all my bags, picking out all your food, deep freezer, snacks, your grandmama's milk, and everything, what you gonna do? I'm curious. What you gonna do?
You will be shot. Now, in liberal areas, they'll probably do nothing, but I would recommend against doing this. And then we have this video. I want to jump to the, let's just play this tape.
It's been day 5, and I have not received no food stamps. My disability checks is on hold. My cash benefits is not coming no more. They're still pending. It is the taxpayer's job to pay for my kids to eat and for my kids to be taken care of. I have over 2,000 followers on TikTok, and I can't get not one person to send me 50 cents. If you're watching a video and you can't send me nothing, I'm blocking you.
Part of me just says that's got to be a fake video. There's no way that lady is real. You follow me, send me money, or you're being blocked. Maybe no one sent her the memo that her followers are fake. But this is an interesting conversation, the Snap-pocalypse. It's been going on for some time. And I've heard from conservatives. I've seen the liberals. I'm curious what the libertarians are going to think because, libertarians fall somewhere in between on a lot of these issues. So I'll be pulling in. Let's grab this, see if we can get it going. Dave Smith, what is up?
What's up, brother? How are you, man?
I'm good. My friend, it's the Snap-pocalypse, they're calling it. Welfare benefits are set to expire November 1st. Trump says he's going to get it done, but I don't know if he means it. And this is a big story in that 42 million people will be cut off from their welfare benefits. It's going to have a ripple effect bro. It just gets crazy, right? So you've got pockets in cities where the stores rely on EBT or SNAP for a large percent of their margins. It may be 5, it may be 10% or more. They can't survive without this. It's going to impact producers, but the big thing we're seeing is the threat of violence and looting unless people get our tax dollars to pay for their livelihoods. Now, I'm curious. You're a libertarian. Do you want to see SNAP just gone overnight? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think it being gone overnight would probably be the most reckless way to do it, and I think, look, obviously, like from my perspective, and I think from most sane people's perspectives, none of these programs should exist to begin with. But, I always, as is always my North Star, was when Ron Paul ran for president, what he would always say is what you have to do if you want to have drastic cuts in the government is you have to stop funding the worst things first. You have to stop funding the unnecessary wars. You have to stop funding the unnecessary militarization of local police departments and the huge black budgets for the intelligence agencies. And then you have to, with some notice, let people know that in X amount of time, we are going to be cutting these programs as well. And of course, the government shut down politics, which has been politics now for over a decade in this country, is always the worst way to do everything. But I guess maybe zooming out more, the thing that is amazing to me that more people aren't talking about, it's like it reminds me almost with the conversation when Biden was president over student loan debt forgiveness. And you're like, okay, even if we're having that conversation, at what point are we going to discuss the elephant in the room? Like, at what point are we going to go like, okay, but wait a minute, you got to go a couple $100,000 into debt for college and then you're working at DoorDash after that. That's a pretty big issue. Right. And the fact that 40 million people in this country are dependent on the government for food in a first world prosperous country in 2025 with all of the wealth that we have, I mean, that is something that's a sign of a very sickening, dysfunctional society.
Well, we created that system with welfare. We made it possible for large swaths of our population to not have to work to eat. I got a number you probably know, but we talked about this the other day. Did you know that about 37% of our economy is the government.
Yeah.
Now that is a problem. I can't remember. Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, if you look through the 10 planks in the Communist Manifesto, we got just about all of them. I mean, or some version of all of them. You know, like when you look through it, it's like, okay, we didn't abolish all private property, but like, what is property tax really? I mean, that kind of in a way is like the government owns it and you're really just renting it.
Yep.
And you never really own it. And if you're ever delinquent on those payments, they take it away from you. In other words, the government's kind of the landlord of all of our property. And yeah, as you said, I remember watching this with EBT, like on the ground. Like I was living in Prospect Heights, Brooklyn. I'd say this is like around like 2007, 2008. And I remember just like at the local store, and it wasn't like the hood, but it was like next to the hood where I lived. But like at the local convenience store, I remember all of a sudden everyone's using EBT cards. Like it's just always like that's what people are just putting snacks on. And yeah, we've created a whole system now, a whole class of people completely dependent on the government, and that is not good.
Well, I think the communists want it. They want to expand it. They want the economy to get worse in the private sector, so it forces people into the control of the government and their party and their ideology. But we had this debate on IRL a couple nights ago. Everybody in the room, I asked, should November 1st we just let it go dry? And everyone said no, because it's too reckless. It's going to have a ripple effect. I was the only one who said it should. And my reasoning is there is no political reality where Congress will wind this program down in any meaningful way. Not a single Republican, I believe, okay, maybe Thomas Massey, but I believe that the only Republicans, it's going to be Massey and Rand Paul probably, who are willing to stand up on stage and say, I will cut your benefits. So what happens is Donald Trump comes out and says, no one will touch your Medicare or Medicaid or your Social Security. He has to tell people, we won't take away your free stuff. What does that mean? The only direction government can move is towards the expansion of government in people's lives and in the economy. If the only way this stops is a cold turkey accident, then I don't know what else you do. I think it's the only way to do it.
Well, I certainly get your point there. And I think, there's the fact that right now the country is, we're really spiraling into a debt crisis. I mean, this is a really big deal. And it's something that a lot of people, myself included, have been warning about for quite a while at this point. But we're at a point where interest on the debt is overtaking the budget. Yeah. And it's not going down. It's not going down. It's going up. And we are now spending, if we balanced the budget, Tim, we still run $1 trillion deficits just because of the interest on the debt. And how far are we from balancing the budget? It's
impossible.
And yet we have a Republican president, a Republican Congress, and a Republican Supreme Court. And even they're not moving towards spending cuts. They're doing this. I was arguing with Stephen Crowder about this yesterday, because now all of a sudden he's become a Democrat mathematician where he goes, oh, we're cutting $1.5 trillion. And you're like, no, dude, come on. You're doing what the Democrats do now. Where you call that a cut? This is literally, we've joked about this before with inflation. It's like if you gain 50 pounds one year and then the next year you gain 30 pounds, an economist in Washington, D.C. says you just lost 20 pounds.
Right,
right. No regular person thinks about it.
40%.
No, you're getting fatter. It's a real problem. And so I guess just like the fact that I get your point, like maybe this is what it takes. But it is, one way or the other, we're kind of going off this cliff. And the fact that the Republicans got in power and don't even seem to have any interest in any cuts is a real problem.
Well, maybe they do. So I can only speculate. Trump said on Air Force One, we're going to figure this out for November. But part of me thinks the Republicans are intentionally doing this because they want Snap to implode. Because I'm not an economist, but I can try and simplify the issue of debt and interest on the debt. To put it simply, we have taken on so much debt, and this literally just means I love how this works. The U.S. government doesn't need a credit card; it literally just asserts it can pay you back later. So we raise the debt ceiling. The example would be like the government says, we need someone to build this street for us outside of Congress or whatever. So they go to a contractor and say, hey, we're the U.S. government. We're good for it. You know it. And they tack on that debt from that company onto their debt. The debt is largely owed to the American people. So the interest on the debt is when we take on debt, we got to pay it back. So now, even if we taxed everybody, the biggest line item in the budget every year is we're paying interest on debt. We basically have this massive credit card we've been paying the minimum on, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. So one of the things I've been thinking is maybe Trump and the Republicans know this. If the system, if we reach default, the global economy it's a ripple effect through the whole thing, and it's extremely disruptive. So what do? Well, maybe one way to shock the system and start retracting money is this protracted shutdown. And then, it's no individual's fault SNAP is gone. And it's not just SNAP, it's a bunch of other programs. But imagine what would happen if any run-of-the-mill Democrat or Republican came out and said to their constituents, guys, vote for me and I will take away SNAP. They'd lose.
Well, it's a major, isn't that like really one of the fundamental flaws with democracy, or particularly with democracy mixed with big government? And, I remember Mitt Romney got in a lot of trouble in 2012. And God, I hate to ever give credit to Mitt Romney. But remember he got in trouble for that thing where he was saying 47% of people don't pay income tax.
Yep.
But the thing is, right, Tim, like all of us taxpayers do know this on some level. This is a real problem. It's a real problem when you have basically the way our system kind of works is that the entire economy is rigged on behalf of the uber powerful, the super rich. Okay. And then the entire like lower rung of the economy is on welfare. And then there are the people in the middle who are like the productive people who just get caught carrying the burden for all of it. Like you gotta, every year when you're paying your taxes, you gotta pay for the Wall Street bailout and the wars and the welfare that, like all of it falls to the guy who's making $400,000 or $500K a year, which might sound like a crazy lot of money to people who don't have any, but like, you're living in a big city. It's actually not like that wealthy. But again, it's like, so now to the entire Democratic, to the entire portion of the base of voters who don't pay in, who are welfare recipients, what are they moved by? Oh, I'll cut your taxes. That doesn't help them any. They're not paying taxes. And so, yeah, it's a real problem that promising free stuff wins votes. How do you compete with that?
It's true. And that's why even Republicans do it. They'll say these entitlements are bad, but don't worry, yours are justified. Democrats just say free for, I love Zohran Mamdani so much, and it's kind of in a comedic kind of way. If he was a comedian mocking socialists, he'd be too over the top. I love we're going to make buses free and faster. And like, how are you going to do that? Make them go faster? You get like what's slowing the buses down is the science of the combustion engine and the speed limits in the city, or maybe you could argue traffic.
Yeah.
You promise random nothing to people, just sounds good, and people vote. They vote for the communists. But I suppose, with all that being said, do you think the Republicans will actually let the snap-apocalypse happen?
My guess is no. I've watched this movie, as you have too, many times. It always seems to end with like this game of chicken, and then they compromise and raise the debt limit and keep spending us further into debt. That's my guess. That would be, what I would think. But again, I do think, look, even if this is the master plan and like this is the way to cut the SNAP program, it does just seem like, so so you have Donald Trump, we're $38 trillion in debt. He has requested $1 trillion Pentagon budget and has promised to not touch entitlements. But we are going to cut SNAP. I mean, that doesn't even solve the problem. It's just like, why would you choose to start with, like cutting from the most vulnerable people when, as you know, Tim, look, the real issue here is that this is like you were explaining with the credit card system. We can't afford any of this. We sit here, we give foreign aid. We act like we're the rich, father who can support all of his kids. Meanwhile, we're broker than anyone else.
No, it sounds to me like such a perfect example of this like liberal virtue signaling household where it's like the mom brags about how she donates to all these charities, despite the fact they have massive credit card debt, can't afford new clothes, and then just keep taking on new credit cards. But everybody gets to pretend like, oh, they do so well. Now, it's all on credit cards. The funny thing is, I think the debt per citizen right now, it's like $100,000. So
something like that, yeah.
You have to pay $100,000 in taxes. Every American, including 16-year-olds who just entered the workforce, if we are going to pay off this debt. I think the reality is we are going to crash. The economy is very bad. I don't think it's the worst economy we've ever seen, but it is not a good economy. Property values are skyrocketing. Trump wants them to continue because it inflates, it makes people feel like things are improving. Stock market going up even when spending is going down because they just want all the metrics to look healthy. But the reality is people are struggling to afford groceries. They're struggling to buy homes. And now we see this one metric that's hilarious, the LSATs. Did you see this one, the LSAT entry?
I don't think so.
So like last year, LSAT's entry applications was like 18,000. Now it's 32. And this has always been, and I'm not the economist, but this is what the analyses have been saying. When people apply to law school in huge numbers, they're basically saying there is no function of the market that can sustain my life. So I'm going into government arguments for money. Basically, there's no trades, there's no jobs, there's no products being made, there's no culture. So law is the best example of we created a problem that only we can fix, and we're going to take money from productive people to pay you to do it. People are literally saying the opportunity to make money right now is to argue with each other about the way the system is working. And that usually happens right before the economy implodes. I don't see our government, I don't see Trump or anybody doing anything meaningful to cut the budget. So the only thing that makes sense to me is they're going to let the government shutdown keep going. It's almost like, you remember when COVID lockdowns happened, the New York Times wrote that the planet was healing because the carbon emissions. It's like the extended government shutdown is Democrats and Republicans both looking at the debt clock slowing down and being like, this is going to buy us some time. But, okay, so rant over. But my question then is potential violence. Do you think if I agree with you, my prediction is it's not going to happen. They're going to intervene. But do you think with 42 million people cut off from SNAP, you actually see these mass looting, this mass rioting?
I think there's a real concern about that, and I've seen some of those videos that you were talking about too, of people threatening that there will be violence. And there is, there's a mix of it's the economic dynamics and the economic incentives, but then there's also like the kind of culture that we've, guys like me and you, I think have been fighting back against for some years now, where the level of entitlement that some of these people have, like there isn't a feeling of like the little bit of shame that we would just appreciate if someone's living on welfare, like just a little bit, understand that like other people are going to work and are paying for your food. You shouldn't feel great about that. But no, they're like, how dare you? How dare you, this racist system, which owes us this food? And but I'm not making it out like it's all black people on there. There's white people with that same attitude, but it really is. It's a real problem that people have this, which has been, of course, obviously fostered by progressives for many years, that there should be almost like, in a sense, then maybe they won't exactly say it, but you're kind of within your rights to commit an act of violence if your food stamps get cut.
Jeez.
That's an issue we got to be focused on. But again, to the larger point there, right, is like the only way out of it, the only thing the politicians are ever going to do is just print more money.
Yep.
And like you said, they want the stock market to go up. They want the real estate to go up. And that's okay if you're in the ownership class, which me and you are. And so we get beat up by inflation too, but the value of our assets goes up. But it just totally screws over anybody who's not in the ownership class, in particularly young people.
Bro, it's crazier than that. The ownership class, it's crazy that we're at this point. When you buy a house on, when you get a mortgage that you don't think twice about. So let's say someone like me, I make a lot of money. If I bought a house for $300,000, I am not paying cash for it. I'm going to go to the bank and say, I want a low interest mortgage. Cut me the best deal that gets me the lowest interest rate, and I'll pay it. So usually it means my per month you're going to be paying more. But then all you got to do is beat inflation. So one of the techniques used by the ownership class is if I take out a loan for $300,000 to buy a house, within 5 years, the house is now worth $450,000. I could sell it and pay off that debt and take cash out. And now I've made money. Better yet, though, with inflation, the value of the house goes up and the value of the debt goes down. So this is a tactic used by the United States with quantitative easing, so that when we borrow money from foreign countries, we intentionally devalue our currency, so the amount of labor to be paid back is substantially less. So for poor people who don't get raises or who have variable interest rates and are struggling to pay off their mortgage, there's a minimal benefit when inflation devalues the total note you have on your property. But for the ultra wealthy, they're intentionally taking out loans and hoping for inflation, which screws over the working class who have to buy groceries, but benefits them because it devalues the debt they have. So rant over, but I wanted to point out, there's this video I played just before you came in of this black woman saying, it is the responsibility of the taxpayers to take care of my kids. Yeah. How do you function as a country with millions of people who genuinely believe that? That's the point you were just making before. As sooner or later, if we keep voting in this direction, the system implodes. So what do? Do we just stock up on emergency food, go move to the wilderness and prepare for the long fall? Or do we push back and say we've got to cut these people off?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, look, that culture of righteous dependence was created. And so a culture that rejects that can also be created. And I think, I think that's like what we all work toward doing. And so there's that aspect to it. And then, look, I would ideally, if I was in control of the government, it would be a timed phase out type thing. But to your point, I think, which is a very good one, it's like, yeah, but that ain't happening. And then to the larger thing, like I just recently got like a letter from I bought a house like 3 years ago. I got a letter from my real estate agent. This isn't like an official appraisal or nothing, but they estimated that like the house has gone up by, a few $100,000.
Wow.
And, it's this area where I live. I mean, the prices have just shot up. And you look at that, and I remember I was thinking, I was like, I struggled for a lot of years. I was really broke for many years. I'm making really good money now. But I just got handed this gift that I didn't earn. Like that's basically welfare. It's essentially welfare of the way the system works. This wasn't a market function. This is obviously a government function that the price of real estate is being driven up. And so just if you think about it, it's like, so they're, in a sense, it's like they're handing me a welfare check and taking it out of the pockets of young people. That same house is now that much further out of their reach. And then we look around and we wonder why all these young people are demanding socialism. And I think the difficulty for people like us is to point out that it's like, look, it's not true when you guys say profit is theft. That's not true. But under the current system that we live, there is a tinge of truth to the fact that a lot of people are making money in completely unfair ways. But that's because of government intervention. Even Jon Stewart, and I don't know if you saw Jon Stewart and Bernie Sanders were talking about this, and it's like it occurred to Jon Stewart for the first time in his life in his 60s that he goes, these government interventions do seem to drive up the prices of things. And they're both like, yeah, that's kind of true. Well, geez.
Well, Trump wants it. Trump doesn't want property values to go down because I think in his view and in the Republicans' view, there's a lot of Gen Xers, lesser older millennials, but a lot of Gen X and boomers that have stored their wealth in their property. And these people don't want to see their assets decline. So Trump's attitude is houses should just go up. But that means Gen Z and millennials are struggling to buy homes because the prices are going up more than wages and salaries are going up. Now you add this. There's two things I'll add to this. When you government interventions, I could be wrong, but my general understanding is that you've got organizations like BlackRock or whatever. They get effectively infinite money from the Federal Reserve to buy houses, propping up these prices and driving people out of the market. That was the big controversy a couple of years ago. But the big thing that's disconcerting to me is when the boomers die, and we are at the mortality cliff for the boomer generation. They're now hitting 79, 80 years old, which is life expectancy. The estimates are within the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to lose more than half, maybe 2/3 of the boomer generation because, they're old. Who's going to inherit these properties? Well, it's going to go to a lot of their kids. These are going to be middle-aged millennials who aren't going to want to move back to St. Louis or Nebraska or whatever it is their boomer parents live. So they're going to try and sell the house. That's usually what happens when someone inherits a house. They're going to put it on the market. Oh, you know what? It's a bungalow, but in 10 years, it's a $750,000 bungalow because the prices go up. Well, guess what? Nobody can buy it. No Gen Z who's in their late 30s can afford $1 million bungalow, nor do they want to live in these areas. So what does the millennial do? They tell their agent, look, just drop the price. Now it's 700. Nobody buys it. Now it's 600. Nobody buys it. Now it's 500. Nobody buys it. Because millennials aren't buying, Gen Z ain't buying. There is going to be a massive deflationary reaction in the system that's going to put people underwater on mortgages. Some of the people, that's what's going to happen when they inherit the houses. But for all the millennials and Gen Z who buy on mortgage $1 million bungalow, and then after this crash, now have $1 million debt note on a $500,000 house underwater, it's going to be economic crisis. And the Republicans and Trump, they're not doing anything to prepare for this, at least it seems.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's essentially right. You know, there's and how exactly it plays out will be interesting to see. But that's right. I mean, it's an artificially bid up price that is unsustainable. That you're not going to be able at a certain point. There's just not going to be buyers that are left for this stuff. And I will say that. You know, this is really why I have so much contempt for the boomers as a generation. And I like some of them. My mom's cool. But I really do, you know, it's like, it just seems like as a generation, the fact that they didn't all stop and go, whoa, what are we doing? We are totally screwing over the next generation. Like, we can't be for this. It just seems like as a generation, they went, hey, I bought this house 5 years ago for $300,000 and now it's $1.2 million. Isn't that neat?
Well, look at Social
Security.
Oh, go ahead.
No, but you didn't think like, oh, but this makes it impossible for my kids to ever buy a house. Like, what we need in this country is deflation. And ever since the Great Depression, that has been the great enemy of the central bank. But deflation is actually a healthy sign. Deflation is what a healthy economy ought to produce. All deflation means is that, well, and I mean price deflation when I say this, all that means is that we're being more productive. And so things are becoming more affordable. That's what a healthy economy looks like.
Look at Social Security as the best example. Because with all due respect to boomers, there are a lot of great boomers. They made Star Trek: The Next Generation. I love it. But as a generation, Social Security is the best example because I talk to boomers, and I'm sure you've heard the same thing. I will mention it's going to become insolvent. You need, right now, I think the number is 4.3 taxpayers to support one Social Security recipient. The system can't sustain itself. And Gen Z is struggling to afford things as it is. If Gen Z can't buy homes and have families, our country is cooked. And then what am I told by 100% of boomers? I paid into it. It's my money. Well, You know what? I got to be honest. I hear you. But the problem is this generation, largely, it's where we begin to see I understand the system is broken, so I better get mine. It is the departure from the ask not what you can do, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. It radically transformed into the everyone else is out for themselves, so I better be too. And that has pushed us into this period now where Gen Alpha is 40 million. Millennials didn't have kids. Gen Alpha is half the size of Gen Z, which means Gen Alpha now entering the workforce, they're 15 years old, about to turn 16, is when they should be entering the low-skill portion of the workforce, don't exist. So what are Democrats doing? Import as many people as possible to offset this. That will only make it worse. 10 years from now, it is going to be wild. And I hear from people, they say, don't worry, Tim, robots will replace the workers. But you know what? It won't replace the customers. It's an absurd notion. So unfortunately, I'm a bit pessimistic on what the future is going to look like. I don't know how you feel, though. Are you happy?
Well, you know, I try to stay optimistic about the long run, but I will just say that, look, this is just on the bottom line of it is just that Medicare and Social Security are completely indefensible. They're just completely indefensible. And this nonsense that you paid into it. No, you paid into your government and they blew that money. They not only blew that money, they blew that money, then borrowed some more money, and that wasn't enough. So then they printed a whole bunch more money after that. That money doesn't exist. It would be a different statement if we had ever put it in a lockbox and you were talking about your money that you were putting in. The fact is that Social Security and Medicare are giant wealth redistributive policies that redistribute from the poorer to the wealthier. It is indefensible. There is no capitalist or no socialist who can defend a redistribution from a poorer group to a richer group, and we should abolish all of it. And Trump is very bad on that.
Yeah, I don't think you'll ever get it. It goes back to the same argument. Give me one politician, and it's maybe Massey and Rand Paul, who's going to campaign and saying, vote for me and I'll cut your benefits. Because the attitude of the individual is going to be, I know this is maybe bad, but it's sinking, so I better take mine. And that's where we're going to keep going. Maybe this is the fourth turning. The system's going to buckle, some kind of conflict or controversy or depression, and the strong will survive. And from this, it will restart. I don't know. But Dave, it's been great. You have any final thoughts, and where can people find you?
Now, Thomas Massey and Rand Paul are right. The libertarians are right about all this stuff again. ComicDaveSmith.com, and Part of the Problem is my show. Always great talking with you, Tim.
Thanks for coming, man. I really do appreciate it. We'll see you again soon.
Absolutely.
Take care. That is, of course, Dave Smith. And I love the controversy around all of these personalities. It's like Dave's got opinions on war or Israel, whatever, and then everyone gets mad. Look, man. Everybody's got opinions on different things. I'm willing to be friends with even leftists and argue with them on the bad things. If we can focus on the good things, we can get done. And that's why I'll give a shout out to Cenk Uygur of all people, despite the bad views he's got. Cenk has long said, okay, fine. Can we map out where we actually agree and just do it because we want that to happen? So for a lot of us, it's ending the war machine or spending more money in America. And if we can get done what we agree on, we agree on it. But I got to say, I think the libertarians are right on most of this government spending. You cannot create a culture that says we will fund your life even if you don't work. Because 10, 20 years later, this is what you end up with. Now, I'm actually in favor of EBT and SNAP and all that stuff, but it's got to be strict and rigid. Dave mentions the shame. Yeah, I said this before. I got food benefits when I lived in Seattle for it might have been 3 months, because I think they give you 3 months and then it stops and you have to re-up, and I didn't. I had it for probably 3 months. It was $140 a month or something, and I felt embarrassed. But it was, the reality was I thought I'd find a job and I struggled, and then I had people say, hey, look, man, you pay taxes, right? You worked, you pay taxes. It's here for you when you need it. And I said, okay, look, I'll only use what I need. And I bought groceries, cold foods. I didn't abuse it. And when I found a job, I said, I don't need it anymore. That's the way it should be. And it should be embarrassing. I don't think you need to be overly embarrassed or ashamed that sometimes you need help, because I'm for that system. I am not for people screaming, it's your responsibility to feed my kids. I am not for a system where people intentionally don't work and game the system. That needs to be purged, that system, and cleaned up. So I'm with the libertarians on this one. My friends, Devory Darkins is going live. He is live now. We're going to send you on your way to join his show. And man, this guy, he's rising the ranks. He's got a fantastic show. I'm a huge fan. It was awesome to hang out with him when we went to his studio. Check out his show. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Share the show with everyone you know. We're back at 8 p.m. for Timcast IRL. We will see you at the DC Comedy Loft November 8th. Get your tickets while you can. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.